Welcome to People Unplugged, the podcast from the creative team at People Unboxed. I'm Westy, Digital Director at People Unboxed. This is the People Unplugged podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Today I'm really pleased to have an old friend of mine on, someone who lives in two very interesting worlds. So the learning and development world, which is very similar to my world, and then a world that possibly couldn't be further away from mine, which is a world of stand-up comedy. So Anthony Williams, great to have you on here. How are you, mate?
I'm very well, Westy. It feels like a long time since we've caught up, and I know we've been trying to get this in the diary for ages, but I guess the good news is every day we didn't do it, I've learnt more, and I think there's more to talk about. So there you go. Serendipity.
Excellent. It almost feels like we planned it. So before we dive into sort of the nitty-gritty of that, you've been working, or we've been working together, I guess, in learning design and L&D for probably it's got to be at least 25 years. And I know you have a strong focus on sort of that digital transformation thing, but then I guess in the last, 5-6 years, maybe you can put me right on that, you took this sort of big leap into sort of stand-up comedy, so I guess that's the best place to start. So what's the initial spark that made you think, yeah, you know what, I'm going to stand on stage and tell some jokes?
Yeah.
Take us through how you got to where you got to.
So it's a long and winding road, but as you were absolutely right, I've been in L&D for exactly 25 years. So I started pretty much at the turn of the millennium, and my first few roles in L&D were primarily around face-to-face learning, like most of us were, and I always really enjoyed that. And I'd always tried to make my sessions fun and engaging, and there was always bits that, in hindsight, I crowbarred in because I thought they would be cool. So I remember doing a communications course where somehow I convinced myself that playing the Four Candles to Ronnie sketch would really help them with their communication skills. I don't know whether it did, but it was 5 minutes well spent in my opinion. So I'd had this going on in the background, but never really thought about it. And then I went through sort of major life change in 2019 where my marriage was coming to an end and I was moving on and really ready for a new chapter in my life. And I'm a huge believer in, I don't want it to sound too sort of Crystal Healy time things, but for the universe will give you what you need when you need it, which I think is a really nice way of approaching things because it helps you deal with the good things and the bad things. So I'd reached this crossroads in my life. I was single, living alone for the first time in my whole life. Never lived alone before. And I thought, well, you know what, maybe I should have a look at this dating scene, see what's going on. Ended up matching with a comedian.
Okay.
So that was quite interesting. And then being a man, of course, very quickly turned the conversation to, I could do what you do.
Oh, I could do that. Yeah,
I
knew where that was coming. Yeah.
Looks easy, that. And to Dawn's credit, she was like, well, if you genuinely do want to give it a go, I'll tell you two things. One, you can, and two, it's harder than you think.
Right.
And that was my starting point, really. I was like, okay. And I guess what had always been holding me back, it was probably there. I'd never really thought about it consciously, but I think probably what would have held me back is I just didn't know what to talk about. What would my material be?
Yeah.
And then suddenly, my eyes are open to this whole new world where I'm newly single in my late 40s, and the world's moved on, and there's all these dating apps, and
so there's a lot of content right there in theory.
Yeah,
right?
just what's it like? What's it like to live on your own in your late 40s? And I started to pick up things, and I guess this is something that comedians will, and I guess people in L&D as well, is you observe things differently. So when you're looking at a learning solution, you're looking for, right, what are the performance outcomes? What is it that people need to do to get there? Right, let's zone in on that. And in comedy, it's a similar thing. You're like, right, what's something really relatable but has a funny angle that nobody else has thought about yet? And that's kind of where my brain started to go. And so Dawn was like, right, come on then, let's get this sorted. And again, this is the universe coming together. Literally at the point where I'm starting to write my set, Nick Shackleton-Jones launches his brilliant book, How People Learn. And at the book launch, on the invite, it says, come along, bring a talent. And I thought,
Wow. So there's your chance.
wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So now not only have I got something to talk about, but now I've got an opportunity to do it. I've got that platform. So I went along. I did a lot of pacing around the venue before I went in, going, shall I, shan't I, should I do it, shouldn't I do it? And I did. I ended up doing what I thought would be about 5 minutes of material, ended up being about 7.
Right.
Went really well. Came back and Dawn was like, right, what's your thoughts? Have you scratched the itch? Is that it? Is it out of your system? And I was like, no, I don't think it is.
No, it'd be at that point, right?
I
Yeah,
think I
yeah.
need to do this again.
Yeah.
So went along to an open mic night in Nottingham, near where I live. Again, universe coming together. I just went along to watch. I
Yeah.
was like, I'll go and have a look, see how it works, see what standard people are at, because I've only ever said this stuff out loud once. I'm probably not ready, but I'll see what's going on. And as I went to get a drink from the bar about 9:30, the compere went to tell the landlord that we're probably going to wrap up early because we don't have as many acts as we normally do. And at that point, I had an out of body experience where I observed my mouth
Hold on, I
saying,
can do this.
I'll do some, I'll do 5 minutes, is that all right? And I ended up doing, again, probably like 7 or 8 minutes. And unknown to me, most of the audience was actually other comics and promoters.
Right.
And so after the set, they were all coming up going, "Oh, that was really good. How long have you been gigging? How come I've not seen you before?" And I'm like, well,
Once.
technically, this is my first gig, really,
Including
because
today, but once.
yeah, including today once. Um, so that kind of snowballed, and a few of them were like, "Well, I run a night here and I run a night there. Why don't you come along?" And so what went very quickly from a I'll get this out of my system, I'll get it done, became a actually this might be something. And I would say very quickly, it's, I guess, like any hobby, it can consume you quite quickly, and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And bearing in mind, I'm living on my own, so it's an opportunity to be able to go out,
Yeah,
meet
sure.
people, have a chat, without that pressure of, well, I'm on my own. Well, so are all the other acts, so
Yeah.
that's okay. And then I guess what happened was quite quickly. So this would be May 2019 when I started. By the August, I'd probably done 50 gigs by then.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean it was getting a little bit
With
ridiculous.
similar content, Anthony, or were you sort of?
Yeah, so it starts to evolve a little bit, and yeah, I got what's called your 10 spot. So you usually in comedy you start with 5 minutes, then you stretch it to 10, and then you usually go to 20, and
Right.
they're the kind of normal
Or
set
steps
lengths.
that you take. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I'd got up to a 10. I'd done probably about 50 gigs. And what I'd started to observe is a lot of these gigs were great, a lot of them were good, but a lot of them were a little bit shambolic. They were a
Right.
little bit DIY. You might rock up and they'd forgotten to advertise it, so you got no audience, or there was no PA system, or there was no lighting, or you'd get there, it was supposed to start at 8, but actually it started at past. And
Yeah. Yeah.
there was a lot of stuff that I thought I could probably do this.
Yeah.
Because I've organised events for 25 years. I know how to structure a day's
Hey,
training. I know how
you
to
know,
get people
and,
in
yeah.
and all
As you're
that stuff.
saying that now, how often do we just pitch up into a classroom and go, "Well, I hope there's going to be a flip chart. I hope there's going to be a PowerPoint."
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah.
And you can take control of that stuff, right? So,
Sure.
over the years, you're like, well, there might not be, so I'll keep a projector in my
Yeah. So
boot.
I'll
I'll
take a
make
long
sure I've got
HDMI
some
cable with
pens.
me, and yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all of that stuff. So I started to think, well, maybe I'll put on a night because it will do two things. One, I think it will help me run better nights, and that'll be good for comedy. And two, it'll give me more stage time because, whilst I'm getting these open mic spots, it's quite hard, really hard to progress in comedy because there's a lot of acts all vying for the same spots, and effectively the whole industry works like a marketplace.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
as a promoter, you say, look, I want a compare, I want an opening act. Here are the fees, and then on average, when I advertise a gig, I'll probably get 50 applications for every spot.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I thought, well, this will be great. Like, I'll have a think about that. All I need is a venue. I'll put on a night. I'll compare it because I think that probably fits my skill set. I'll get some of my mates that I've met over the last couple of months. We'll put on a show and we'll see how it goes. And again, the universe help me out, because just as I'm considering this, saw a little post on Facebook. A guy who runs a pub in Belper, which is like 20
Yeah.
minutes down the road, says, comedians wanted. I want to start a comedy night. Are there any comedians local that want to perform? So I reached out to him and said, look, you do want comedians, but actually what you need is a promoter.
Yes.
Because if you're going to put on a
Someone's going
comedy
to run the
night,
night for you, really. You just
you
want
need
someone
someone to run the
almost,
night.
yeah, out of a box, right? That he needed
Yeah,
to teach. Yeah.
and also, unlike music, it's unlikely if you put on a music open mic night, it's unlikely someone's going to rock up and sing something that might get you cancelled. That's more likely to happen in the comedy world.
Fair
You know,
point. Yeah.
you say I want 6 comedians, you have no idea. 3 of them
No.
might be racist for all you
Yeah.
know.
Right.
So the big part of what a promoter can do is kind of weed out the people that shouldn't be on a stage at
Sure.
all, but also then curate a night that will work for an audience who you can't really predict who's going to come along. So you know, if you're going to run a night, you want different voices effectively, and I think that's something that we're getting better at in comedy. So I set up this night. It goes quite well. It becomes a monthly night, and last night would have been our 6th anniversary of doing the
Wow.
monthly night in Belper. We've moved to a bigger venue now. It's a nice 100-seater venue, and it's gone from me and my mates who can maybe just about get through 10 minutes to TV stars. We've had Jeff Norcott, Emmanuel Sonobi, Scott Bennett, Sol Bernstein, real names that you would see on TV, you'd certainly see in big theatres. So it's kind of grown, and all around that, I've been working on. So how do I become a better comedian? How do I become a better promoter? And then the bleed through is really interesting. How being a better comic has made me a better trainer, and
Yeah.
being a trainer has helped me be a better comic. So there's so much synergy in those two worlds that it's incredible. And so I guess now what I'm looking at is, how do we use that? How do I help people bring those two things together?
Yeah.
So that's kind of
And
what I'm doing
that's a
now.
bit I'd love to dig into. But before we get there, I think I'd love for you to kick that conversation off, thinking around confidence in particular, because
Hmm.
I think maybe I'm showing people behind the curtain here and I shouldn't be, but there's this idea that. And I still get it now. You know, I'll pitch up and I'll deliver courses, and and I walk into here's a room with 50 people in it, and and away I go, me and a PowerPoint, and and you're holding the room. I think there's that for people on the other side of the fence. They look at that and say, yeah, it's all right for you though, because you're a trainer, so therefore you're really confident, you know exactly what you're doing, you're not going to get nervous, you know exactly what's going on. Well, firstly, that's just not the case. And secondly, I think I read that you said something about confidence being, you used to think it was about knowing your stuff, but now it's about knowing how to deliver that stuff. Have I got
Absolutely.
that right? So
Yeah,
because
totally.
I think people think, well, as a trainer, what do I need to do? I need to learn my script inside out. I need to know all of the content, and then I'll be fine. But there's way more to it than that, right?
There is, and we'll have all been on those courses where there'll be some person stood at the front of the room with a PowerPoint that will be effectively their script.
Yeah,
So they'll be heavily reliant on the materials, and because they're in that zone, because they're so focused on the material, they miss all the cues. They miss the fact that, for the last half hour, this guy's been checking his emails. They
yeah,
miss the fact that someone asked a really important question, but you didn't pick up on it, so you haven't gone down that avenue because you're so conscious that you've got another 73 slides to get through before you wrap up that you're like, oh, we haven't got time to deal with that, missing the point entirely.
sure.
So it's not really about the material at all. It's about how you deliver it and how you connect with the audience. And that is, above all else, the thing you learn in comedy very, very quickly. You know, even this week, I did a gig on Tuesday at one of my favourite clubs in the country, a place in Manchester. The night was good. There was 60 people in, and I was expecting there to be maybe 20. It's a Tuesday night.
Mm.
The compere was fabulous. All of the acts that had gone on before me were great. I'm closing the night, which normally, psychologically, the headline act normally gets a lot of goodwill, and it was just okay. It was
Right.
fine. It was nowhere near as good as either I expected it to be or I've had before. And
Why was that? What was
well,
different? What
just
changed?
sometimes you just don't connect as well
Right.
as you think you're going to, and it could be for a number of reasons. It could be something I said early on. It could be there's a vibe in the room. There's so many variables. And I had to really think on my feet and really tune into, right, what are they going for and what are they not going for? And in the moment, what they were going for was spontaneous stuff where I could interact with the audience. So I was doing a little. There was some people with interesting names. There was a woman in the audience whose name was Britain,
Okay.
and she was American. Which and there's stuff to play with that. Also, her sister was in the room, so I was able to go, okay, are you older or younger than your sister? And she's like, oh, I'm older. I was like, oh, so it's not Britain first then. That's a relief. And things
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they loved that. As soon as I went into my material, they were like, yeah, it's all right. It's
Is that
okay.
because it sounds scripted and
I
and
don't know.
obviously, yeah,
Yeah,
because I think sometimes, again, going back to sort of where it crosses over with L&D, I can present everything that's on the slide, but to your point, I think the real skill isn't. It sounds like I'm telling you this and you know this, but this is for the audience more than anything. There's a big difference between a presenter and a facilitator, right? So
yeah,
the facilitator listens to what's in the room. They read the room in sort of real time. It's about, actually, do you know what? Let's just get out a flip chart and let's have a look at this.
absolutely.
So it's is that more of the skill that you use in your comedy rather than learning a script and saying, right, I'm going to work through this script no matter
Yeah,
how it's going?
yeah, definitely. So I would say I probably compare 70% of the time now, and that is absolutely that skill set. So you walk into a room, you have a look around, what's going on, what's the atmosphere like, what's the mood in the room, what do I need to do with this audience to get them ready to watch some acts, and you'll spend a little bit of time. And you'll have a play with the audience. You'll bounce ideas around. You'll ask people what they do and who they are. And what you're basically doing is priming that audience for how the
Yeah,
night's going to go. And that is all spontaneous. And I absolutely do love that. And I think that's one of the skills that does differentiate between presenting and facilitating. It's understanding that everybody in that room is different.
yeah.
They've all come in with different needs. They've all got different outcomes. And whilst, there will be commonality because if they're on a course, there's got to be something.
Mhm.
I've always said, like, in a day's course, there's probably like 20 minutes for everybody, but it's not the same 20 minutes for anybody.
Right.
So, you've got to hook into what is it that this person's trying to get out of this. Um, and there's a good chance they don't know what that is. We've all asked that question. So, what are you hoping to get out of today? And it's always, well, I want to learn something new and take something back to the workplace. Yeah, of course
I've
it
been
is.
told to come. Yeah,
I've been
yeah,
told to come, yeah.
yeah.
My favourite answer to that was when I used to do team leader training for a pub company. What do you want to get out of today? 10p an hour pay rise. So
Yeah, that's
at
going to be a
least it's
tough gig,
honest.
right?
At least he's honest. So there is that skill, yeah, of just what's going on. What does this audience need? And that audience can be in the classroom. It can be in a comedy club. What are they looking for? What
And actually,
works
just
for them?
on that, on the audience, before you move on, you and I have obviously been in training situations before where someone, I think there's the classic three different types of learners that turn up. You've got your prisoners that have been told you're going on that course, you don't know
Yeah,
why, and they'd rather be anywhere else. You've got the holiday maker is, this is great because I don't actually have to do any work today. I can just sit here, and if I learn something, then that's great. And I think as trainers, we'd all like to think everyone in there is an explorer who's there and wants to dig into it and wants to take it away and all of the rest of it. So, and in a lot of cases, depending on the course, people have been told that they're coming along, and therefore they're a tough audience. Is that easier on your comedy gig because people have made a conscious effort to be there, or do you still have those people who, I wasn't going to say it, but I'm going to say it, that almost go, well, go on then, make me laugh, like
absolutely
it's
you
a
do.
challenge?
Absolutely you do. And you get that all the time. So you've got to bear in mind if someone's bought tickets, they may have bought tickets for other people too.
Right.
So Where you see that a lot is big groups. The worst time of the year is Christmas time. Office parties can be a nightmare because quite often the only person that wants to go to a comedy club is the person who organised the event, and everyone else is just there because they're like, oh
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
someone else has paid for it, the firm's paid for it, and you do get that. So you absolutely get prisoners. You absolutely get the holiday makers who are like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'd rather be drinking, but yeah, okay, I'll sit and listen. And then you do get comedy fans who really engage. And it's really easy to get sucked into the prisoners because you can see them when
trying
you're
to
on
please the
stage.
people that are the hardest to
Yeah,
please. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and
yeah.
there's something about a comedian's mind that means we spot them a mile off. I can be
Okay.
performing to a theatre of 500 people, and if there's one person on the fifth row with their arms folded, that's the person who I'm performing to for the whole set. It's really hard to break that. When in reality, what we should be doing is going, well, if you get something out of it, great. If you don't, you don't.
Yeah.
But everyone else is having a great time, so maybe I should focus on that. And I think sometimes we do that in the classroom as well. Sometimes we get derailed by the one person who's asking the awkward questions, who
Yeah, the
doesn't
mood
want to
hoover,
be
someone who's a
there.
little bit
Yeah.
awkward, someone that, yeah,
And
yeah.
actually, is there value in it? There might be. You might convince them, but every second you're spending convincing them, you're losing it from the people who genuinely do want to be there. So I think just managing that and going, okay, acknowledging it. Clearly, they're not engaged. What am I going to do about that? Well, I guess minimize the damage they can do is probably what I'm going to go for. So, we'll just shut them down. And we do that on stage.
Right.
We'll talk to someone who clearly doesn't want to be talked to, and we just move on. We just accept it.
So you said about reading the room, and I guess both comedy and training demand that sort of that acute awareness and a quick sort of adapting. Basically this isn't working. The energy's off. You have to adjust on the fly. So how do you do that in your comedy world? And I guess the follow on to that is how can you apply that to a sort of training session? If you're in a training session, you realise you've lost those people, they're starting to flag, or you're going down a certain route with your comedy, and that's not really maybe landing. How do you adjust on the fly?
Yeah, so I think in both cases that's something that only experience can teach you. So in comedy, I might be booked to do a 20-minute set. Well, I know I've got an hour's worth because I've done an hour show.
Right,
So in the moment, you back out and you go, they're not going for this, I'll go for something else. Or better still, you preempt that by picking up on things that have happened or things that are going on. So I'll give you a good example, a great example. I was doing a gig a couple of weeks ago and it was the day after Ozzy Osbourne's funeral.
yep,
And a guy in the front row had an Ozzy t-shirt on. And so I just started talking to him, and I was like, "Oh, it's really sad about Ozzy. Did you manage to get to the Villa Park concert?" And he's like, "No, I wish I could have gone." And then that led me into two bits of material. One about ticket prices being really high, but then that leads into why I love going to watch tribute shows, and I've got a good 5 minutes on tribute shows, which
right,
is really good stuff. But I had no intention of doing that. It's not a bit I often do in my set, but it just led beautifully into it. So everyone in the audience is like, "Wow, this guy's just made that up."
yeah,
He's
gotcha.
just he's spoken to this guy. They're talking about gigs. It goes on to ticket prices. Now he's talking about tribute acts, and he's linked it all back and it's doing lots of things. So it's making this person feel very welcome, and I've got empathy with you. We've got something in common. You'll know that as a trainer. When you bridge
Yeah,
that gap with your delegates, often that can be just selling your credibility. I've done your job, or I know the language you use. All of those sort of things builds those bridges, and we do it in comedy as well. But I knew where I was going with that.
yeah.
I knew the minute I saw that Ozzy Osbourne t-shirt, I was like, right, here we go. We talk about gigs, we talk about tributes. That's got a great piece to it, and that'll be a great payoff. But knowing that the audience is like, wow, that's impressive.
As you're talking through that, and I'm smiling because for whatever reason, that's just in my mind. That's just taking me right back to O-level French, which is to have the bit where you have to go in and you have the verbal conversation with someone, and then I'd learnt things about holidays, my pastimes, and all of that stuff. So I've got all of these sort of, I guess, pre-prepared snippets, if you want to look at it
Yeah,
like that. And
yeah,
then if I can just get them to talk about that, and all of a sudden they're talking about my family, and I think, bugger, where am I going? I go, yeah, I'll go on holiday with my family, and that's it, I'm in. So
Yeah,
it sounds like that
it's
sort of thing
exactly
of,
that.
it's there in my head somewhere to pull back when I need it. But
Yeah,
I'm hoping, as you say, it looks like it's off the cuff, which can
yeah,
only build sort of confidence in the room.
absolutely. And you can do that in the classroom. You can pick up on something. It might be something you were planning on doing anyway, but
Yeah,
you just redo it. So, you think, okay, I'll skip to that bit now because it feels right.
yeah,
Or it might not be. It might be something else that's in your toolkit. And again, then I really like that. Showing your workings with a group to go, oh, that's a really good point. Now, we weren't going to talk about this. However, I think it's really important we do.
yeah. Let's
And then
take
you
5
pull
minutes
something
looking
out
at
the bag.
accountability, or I
Yeah.
love
And
that.
then again, I think that really sells your credibility that you're not just presenting the stuff that you were planning on presenting. Actually, you've got deep knowledge and you're a facilitator. So even if you don't have deep knowledge, if you're a good facilitator, you could coach it through anyway and go, that's a brilliant idea. What do you think? What does everyone else think about that? And again, you can do that on stage. Who's been on holiday? Oh, you've been on holiday. Funnily enough, I've been on holiday too, and I've
Yeah,
got
yeah, yeah.
5 minutes about going on
And
holiday.
chances are there's going to be someone in the room. Okay, I love that. So it feels to me, and we're going to switch gears slightly now because I want to talk about Couch to 5 minutes, which it feels like we're already kind of going down that route because you're giving me some of the sort of tips and tricks and things that can do that. So I think you've trained over 30 new comics now, and they pretty much say
Yeah,
the
in the
same
last
thing,
year.
which is this has helped me in my life off the stage as much as it has on. So why don't we start at the beginning? So take us through what Couch to 5 minutes is. I'm going to say Couch to 5K at some point and get it wrong. Couch to
No.
5 minutes. How does the program work? What was your driver behind it? What are your objectives for it?
Yeah. So there's a few really. One is like me 6 years ago. I suspect there are a lot of people out there that are like, I'd like to give that a go, but I've
Yeah.
no idea how you start. You can't just pick up the phone to Live at the Apollo and get yourself a 5 minute slot, right? There's work to be done. So I can help with that. So for people who genuinely are like, I want to do comedy, I want to be a comedian, then it's obvious. Yeah, go on a course. What we do on the course is not only help people to be funny, but help them to understand how the process works. So how to get on and off the stage, etiquette, what to do, what to do and not do, how to apply for gigs, all of that sort of stuff gets bundled up in there as well. So for people who are aspiring comedians, there's an obvious sell. However, what I've noticed is we also get people who want to come on the course because either they want to help themselves with an actual phobia. So we have quite a number of people who are like, I have to do this sometimes at work and it terrifies me.
What the presenting bit?
Yeah, the
Right,
whole
okay.
standing in front of a
Yeah,
group
yeah.
of people and controlling the room essentially. That tends to be what it boils down to is they don't like to be the focus of the room. They feel under pressure. Because they're under pressure, they don't perform. Because they don't perform,
It's
it
self-perpetuating,
snowballs,
isn't it?
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So we get a lot of that of, in my day job, I'd like to be more confident in front of people, and we can absolutely help with that in a number of ways. So firstly, there's a load of techniques we talk about that will really help them anyway. But also at the end of that course, they will get on stage and they will perform 5 minutes in front of probably about 100 people, and it will never be as big as that in a boardroom or
No,
in a
no.
training room. So if you can nail that once, you can nail it on a smaller scale anytime you like. So it's about that getting beyond I'm no longer scared of talking in front of my boss because I've spoken in front of 100 strangers.
Yes.
So it's doing that piece as well. But there is the technical stuff, just how to frame what you're going to say in a way that will make it land better. It's amazing. And the transformation we see in the 8 weeks, often people come with a good idea of what they're going to talk about at the end of it, but it's like talking to your mate in a pub.
Yeah,
It's like, oh, the other day I went to the shop and I bought a blue T-shirt.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Right.
By the
So
end of
do
it,
you get people
it's
who
a
come
story.
there who've already got what content that they think's right, or is it just as likely
Sometimes.
that people will turn up and they literally have nothing and don't know where to
Oh,
start?
absolutely. I've had people on the course who had nothing for 5 weeks, and so they're like, I still don't know what's going to be in my set, and then the penny drops and suddenly it clicks in. But the way that I structure the course is we start out with the individual, and understand what is it about you that you can talk about, because there's a danger that if you don't dig into that, you just end up with a lot of people saying the same thing, because
Sure. Yeah,
every
yeah, yeah.
every zeitgeist that's out
I
there
heard
gets
this and it was
picked up.
funny, therefore I'm going to say that as well. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
I could tell you right now on open mics all over the country, there will be lots of people talking about age verification for adult websites,
Yep.
right? There'll be every angle you could possibly, because it's a zeitgeist, right? It's a
Yep.
thing. It's
Yep. Yep.
happening. So we have to dig a bit deeper than that. So what is it about you that makes you you, but not the other person in the room? So, that could be your background, your upbringing. It could be a hobby. It could be a talent. Could be anything. We had a guy on my last course, a Romanian guy who was 6'6", who did 5 minutes on being a Romanian guy who's 6'6", and it was brilliant. It was
I couldn't
amazing
do
stuff.
that.
It was incredible, and it came
Yeah.
up with some wonderful stuff. It started with, every time I meet someone, they go, "Wow, what are you, like 6'6"?" And they would go, "I don't know. I'm a Romanian. I don't know what 6'6" means," and it was
That's
just
it. Yeah, yeah.
really great. And then it was the whole, "I'm so tall. I know when it's raining before you do, and I'm so
Yeah,
tall
yeah,
I
yeah.
can pick up Radio 4 and all this." And it was
Yeah, yeah.
just built out of, there's something about you that is different. Let's explore that, and that's great. We've had all sorts of stuff with, everything from people's ethnicity and background and religion, right through to a guy who did a sponsored marathon, and how that went awry. It can be anything, but that's essential. I think people buy into you. It's
Yeah.
you they want to see. Absolutely, you can go up and just tell some jokes. Yeah, some comedians will do that, and if they're very good at it, then it works. People like Gary Delaney, Mark Simmons will just tell one-liner jokes. They're just puns. Tim Vine is another one. You
Yeah.
don't ever learn anything about that person. They're just
No.
telling jokes,
Yep.
but you've got to be very good at it, because otherwise it's just not engaging.
Yeah.
What's much easier, and I think more
Almost
impactful.
feels like they're reading from a joke book, right? But they're
Yeah,
not, because they
yeah.
are so good at it. Yeah,
They
yeah,
are so good at it, and they've written them, so
yeah,
kudos to them. Whereas I think telling your story is more interesting. So what is it about you? What's going on in your life? What have you observed? And where you can make that relatable enough that your audience is like, "Oh, I can imagine what that's like,"
yeah,
but funny enough that they're like, "But it doesn't happen to me," and
yeah.
that's good. Yeah.
So in both of those worlds, I mean, both the obviously the comedy world and the L&D world, they lean into that idea of feedback, iteration. So the
Mhm.
people that come on Couch to 5 minutes, do they need a really thick skin to be able to do that? Because I'm assuming for them to improve and for them, they've got to be happy with receiving feedback from
Yeah,
people, right?
yeah,
Because
and we
you
spend a
don't want to
lot
sort
of
of chuck
time
them
on
out
that.
there and then the first time they do it, they're going to fall on their face because they're never going to come back in. So how do you
Exactly.
manage that part? How do you politely say, I don't know, maybe that's a trainer skill, that politely go, you're not quite what I had in mind,
Yeah.
or how does that work?
So it's essential. You're absolutely right, and it's the reason we work in groups. I can train people to do comedy one to one, but I think it's more powerful when you've got group feedback, peer to peer learning, right? The way we do that is right up front. We set that as a framework, and we say, part of the improvement process is constant feedback. Now, what's great in the course is you're inviting that, and that's wonderful, because then you can really benefit from those gifts that you get given. But when you're on stage, you are constantly getting feedback. Did that land? Did that not land? Why is that bloke on the third row yawning? Why has someone gone up to the toilet halfway through my set? Why is that person really enjoying it and the person next to them really isn't enjoying it? All of that data is coming all the time. So right from day one, every time we do something, we invite feedback on it. And I use a really simple model. You may have come across it. We use the AID model for
Yep.
feedback.
Mm.
So it's very much, it's data based,
Yeah.
right? So it's not, "Oh, I really enjoyed that. Well, fab, but what do I do
What
about
was the
that?"
action? What did you
Yeah.
see? Yeah, yeah,
What did you see or hear or feel? What was the action? What was the activity? What was it? And what impact did that have?
yeah.
And if I were to do that again, how could I improve that impact or get a bigger impact, magnify it, whatever? And that framework works beautifully
Yeah.
in comedy and in L&D. But it means that an act can do a couple of minutes, open it up to the floor, and then they'll go, "Oh, when you said this, I thought you meant that, and so
Yes.
actually,
Yes.
if you said it this way, you'd lead me down a better path.
Yeah.
That would work better for me." A lot of that comes, around the language people use. Oh, I didn't quite understand what that word meant. Oh, let's use a different word. Oh, I get that word. And a lot of that structure comes through the course of actually everybody should be kind of telling their truth, but
Yeah, I
that
quite like
doesn't
that because
mean it's literal.
yeah,
Right.
and that's tying into that. I think the assumption is that the feedback's coming from the right place. So it's
Yes.
there to be constructive. It's there to
Yeah.
help you. So the feedback's there to help you do better or be better, not necessarily to make you feel
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Because otherwise,
Yeah.
it's going to be, oh yeah, yeah, I like
Yeah.
that, and you
It was
think, yeah, but
fine.
what does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes, we have to be quite direct.
Mm.
On my last course, there was a guy who ultimately ended up probably having one of the best sets at his showcase event. But midway through, his material it felt like it was punching down a little bit. So it was a little bit old school. It was kind of take my wife type stuff.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And it was a bit like, it's not landing, it's not working for me. It sounds just like you're moaning about your wife.
yeah,
And actually, what he did was a really good job of flipping that around. And basically, the reason that he doesn't get on with his wife is because he's a pain.
yeah.
And
Right.
then it becomes funny. So
Yes.
then it's because when you're the one that's causing the issues, that's fine. And that's part of what we teach, is punching down's old hat. It's not right. It's not great. And if they're not there to defend themselves, then it's even worse. So actually, if that story has to have a fall guy, make it you. It
Yeah.
might not be the literal truth. That's okay. And equally, if there's details in your work that can be changed without impacting it, then just do that. So often people will talk about, oh, I had this disastrous trip to Aberdeen. Okay, is Aberdeen relevant to the story, or is it about a disastrous trip? It's more about the trip, right? So wherever you're
So,
performing, make it a disastrous trip to somewhere nearby,
yeah, I had a
so
disastrous
they can
trip to
relate.
Bedford once. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So stuff like that, just understanding. And
Makes it
again,
relatable as well, right?
in
Which again,
L&D, do the
there's
same
so
thing.
there's
Make it
so many
make it
crossovers.
contextual. Yeah,
Yeah,
don't talk about abstract things if the concrete works. Don't talk about, oh, when an organization goes through a restructure, if
yeah,
the company you're in is going through a restructure, then say when you are going through
yeah,
your restructure.
yeah.
Bring it to life, make it mean something to the people that are listening to what you say, and it just lands harder. And that's what you're after.
So 8 week course.
hmm
Is that all face to face? Virtual?
So,
How does
so
that
we
work?
we do both. So the last two I've done have been face to face, which is great.
I guess you need to
But
be in
but
your area, right?
yeah, so you need to be, yeah. So I've done them in Nottingham and Derby. The next one that I'm starting in September is going to be virtual. And really, the only difference is that the gig you do at the end is going to be local to you rather than all of the participants being in one gig.
And
So
would the attendee organise that themselves, or do you help
yeah,
them with?
and I'll help them with that. So I've got contacts pretty much around the country. So if people on the course can't find a gig to get themselves on, I'll
Yeah,
help them do it. And I've had a few people saying like, well, can't I just do the course and not do a gig? And you can, but I think there's something about that end point. There's something about
yeah.
there's we've it's an achievement thing. It's a mastery thing, isn't it? I'm going to take you
There
through a
is, and it's also
journey,
that
and
motivation bit as well, right? So,
yeah,
I as you know, I run 3 or 4 times a week, but you know
yeah,
what? Every now and again, I'll book in a 10K for 2 months' time because if I don't, I'll stop running because one day I'll think it's raining and I'm not going. Whereas, you know what? If I know
exactly.
I've got that on the horizon, that kind of keeps me
Exactly.
going.
Yeah, exactly that. So the aim is you enroll on the course knowing that in 8 weeks' time you'll be ready to do 5 minutes. So you book that 5 minutes. So I'll help you find a promoter and you go, right, it'll be my first gig. So it needs to be the right environment, needs to be nice and supportive, nice, good, well run open mic. And then we'll aim towards that. And by week 7, you'll know what you're doing. You'll have your 5 minutes. Week 8 is all about testing it out, making sure it works. And then what we want people to do is go and do that open mic, record it, and submit that to the group for group feedback as well. And then we transition from you're learning to be a comedian to actually you're now in a community of new comedians. So then keep that support going, keep feeding back, keep gigging, because there are no shortcuts in this world. You've got to work hard. You've got to, if you want to do well, you've got to keep going, because you only get better by practice. It's not something you can really do in front of the mirror.
Yeah.
You can to a certain extent, but you're not going to get the feedback that you need to improve if you do that. So you have to be out there with a real audience.
And have you got any anecdotal feedback from the people that have done, what are you, sort of 30 people you've taken through? Have they gained skills that they can use in their life as much as when they're standing on a stage? I'm assuming the answer to that must be yes.
100%. So one guy in my last group, a guy called Mark, he is a public speaker. That is his job. He works in environmental science, so he helps organisations transition to net zero and all of that great stuff. And he came on it as just for just something to do, really. But by the time he'd finished the course, he was like, "Oh my God, I've seen so many opportunities in the talk that I do to structure it better, to tell a better story, to be more concise." So we talk about that a lot. In a comedy set, every word has to add value.
Right.
If it's not adding value, why is it there? Because you're just diluting everything then. I had someone who did my first course who did a brilliant story about living on a council estate, and a neighbour used to walk the dogs in a pram, right? And that's a funny premise. But in her story, she told us the names of the dogs, and it never went anywhere. Doesn't matter.
Difference. Yeah.
And what you end up doing is everybody listening to that
Waiting for
is
that to
going,
be something. Right.
yeah, why are the dogs called? And I can't even remember what they were because it didn't go anywhere. So actually, it diminished it. And Mark's feedback was, there are things in my talk that I don't need to say anymore because they're not adding value.
Yeah.
I can do things with structure now. I can use rules of 3 to get more impact. I'm going to put a call back at the end of my speech that brings it all back together. I'm going to be more interactive. I'm going to ask questions of the audience, and I'm going to work with that. So lots of techniques that we talked about, and he's been doing that decades. So I think there's something for everyone to learn. Whether it's I'm not confident enough to stand on a stage, well, now you are. Through to I'd really like to be a comedian. Great, fabulous. Through to sometimes I do presentations. Can you just sharpen them up a little bit? All of those things.
I mean,
well.
For me, and God, this has become a personal thing now. So for me, it's more about how do I take this to the next level? As in, people will say, "Oh, you're a very confident presenter anyway. You know what you're doing. You do that," and you think, "Yeah, maybe, but could it be even better?" It is that mastery piece, which is what really sort of piqued my interest, and I'm sure we'll continue to talk afterwards. But so you've got a course coming up in September. So if people want to find out more about that, how to get involved in Couch to 5 Minutes, or I guess we should do the full circle and say, or connect to you about digital learning strategy. How should people contact you?
Yeah, so you'll find me on LinkedIn, the usual ways. I'm posting a lot about it. So if you're interested, then comment on one of the posts or send me a message, and we'll have a chat about. I'm really keen to understand people's motivations to go on this. So because I want to make sure that everyone gets the best value out of it. Interestingly, the biggest area of interest so far has been people who work in L&D. So that's great, because I get them, right? And I know where they're coming from. But I genuinely think it could be for anyone. And I'm not exaggerating when I say comedy has changed my life. I've gone from I go up and do a bit of open mic to actually, I've got a company, I've got a limited company with turnover and an accountant and a brand and a website and all of that stuff. It has become a significant part of my life, but I know it sounds cheesy, but you know that old ikigai Japanese thing about, something you
Yeah.
enjoy and something people get value from and something you can get paid to do. You know, I'm not going to be retiring on my comedy income anytime soon. I'll tell you that. And if anyone's thinking of getting into comedy because they want to make some money, yeah, that ain't going to happen. But it's such a lovely crossover of things that I think I'm good at, things I enjoy doing, having a great social life. My social circle now is
It's just expanding massively. Yeah.
yeah, I know so many fabulous people. Um, it's just a really, really fun thing to do. So anybody who's thinking about doing it, give it a go because I'm a big believer of only regret the things you've done. Don't regret anything you didn't do. So get up on stage, and if you bomb, well, that still puts you probably in the top 5% of people because most people
But we haven't
have
got anywhere
never
near it.
got up and done it,
Yeah.
right? So give it a go. It can be life changing, genuinely.
What a fantastic place to leave it. Anthony, thank you so much for your time. We'll be sharing all of the links at the end with the show notes anyway. But thanks again for your time today, mate. Really enjoyed the chat.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today. Feeling curious to learn more about how we help people remember stuff? Well, why not sign up for a free trial of our AI-powered bite-sized learning app, BentoBot? You can do that easily at bentobot.com. And you can catch up on interviews with all of our previous guests by subscribing to this pod via Apple Podcasts or any podcast platform. Till next time, take care.